Hello students, good morning. Today's class is the continuation of the previous class. In my last class, I discussed about the relation between deduction and induction, but there are some controversies regarding the relation between deduction and induction. Today, I am going to discuss about the twofold controversies which is there in the relation between deduction and induction. So, let us see what are these controversies. As to the relation between induction and deduction, the twofold controversies are: firstly, is any one of them, that is between deduction and induction, which one is more fundamental? That means, is any one of them more fundamental than other? Between deduction and induction, which one is more fundamental? This is the first controversy, and the second controversy is any of them prior to the other? That means, between induction and deduction, which one is prior, which comes first? So, these are the controversies logicians try to solve. Now, with regard to the first question, that is between induction and deduction, which one is more fundamental? With that question, two extreme views have been held by two groups of logicians. One group is known as formal logicians, that is Hamilton, Mansell, Whitley, etc., their group, and another group by material logicians, that is Mill, Bain, etc. So, regarding the first question, that which one is more fundamental, two extreme views have been held by formal logicians like Hamilton, Mansell, Whitley, etc., and material logicians, that is Mill, Bain, etc. So, these are the two groups of logicians, formal logicians and material logicians, express their views which is opposite to each other. These are the two extreme views given by formal logicians and material logicians. Now, what are they? The formal logicians say that deduction is more fundamental than induction. They give more stress on deduction. They do not even recognize, that means they deny the claim of induction to be regarded as an independent process of reasoning. they do not think that induction is an independent process of reasoning like deduction. Rather, they said that induction itself is deductive in nature and can be expressed in the form of syllogism. That means, logicians here have tried to solve induction syllogistically, because they do not recognize induction as an independent process of reasoning. So, this is what formal logicians think. Material logicians, say Mill, Bain, etc., on the other hand, go to the opposite extreme and said that opposite view, that all inference is at bottom inductive. I repeat, to them all inferences at bottom inductive. That means they are inductive in nature. Then what is the task of deduction? They do not recognize deduction here. To them, deduction here is merely a partial and accidental stage. The purpose of deduction is to interpret the general proposition established by induction. They say that deduction simply interprets the general proposition established by induction, because all inference is as bottom inductive. So, to them the conclusion of induction is only interpreted by deduction, and this is the only task of deduction. So, these are the two groups, formal logicians and material logicians. According to formal logicians, deduction is more fundamental. According to material logicians, induction is more fundamental. Now, with regard to the second question, that is whether induction is prior to deduction or deduction is prior to induction, that means which comes first? It is deduction which comes first or induction? And in that particular case, that means in that particular question, Mill and Jevon here take the opposite sides. With regard to the question that whether induction is prior to deduction or deduction is prior to induction, Mill and Jevon have taken opposite sides. They are opposed to each other. According to Mill's view, that induction is prior to deduction. That means Mill is in favor of induction. In case of induction, we ultimately establish a general proposition in the conclusion, right? Or to say in other words, general proposition which is established in the conclusion of induction constitutes the premise of a syllogism. You all know, as a student of HS second year, what is syllogism? And in order to establish a syllogism, or it is a typical form of deductive reasoning, that in syllogism there must be at least one universal proposition. One proposition must be universal in case of syllogism. It is to be done, and question is, how will you get this universal proposition, which is very much necessary in case of syllogism? How will you get universal proposition? And we all know universal proposition is established by induction. For example, all men are mortal, Ram is a man, therefore Ram is mortal. This is a kind of syllogism. Here two premises, all men are mortal, it is a general proposition. Ram is a man, therefore definitely Ram is mortal. Now, in this particular form of syllogism, the major premise, all men are mortal. How do you know? You are getting this through induction. How? You first have to say S is mortal, P is mortal, Q is mortal, Ram is mortal, etc., etc. Therefore, with the help of inductive leap, you are concluding all men are mortal. So, universal proposition is established by induction only, and that is why Mill is of opinion that induction is prior to deduction. Actually, induction supplies the premises of deduction. Okay. On the other hand, Jevons says that just the opposite view, that deduction is prior to induction. How? In order to establish a general proposition, that means in case of induction, we first frame a hypothesis, and you all know what the hypothesis is. Hypothesis is the starting point of induction, which I have already discussed in my previous classes. Now, the hypothesis can be verified, because hypotheses have to be verified, and hypothesis can be verified only when we deduce consequences from it, and not only that, we are to examine whether the consequences actually agree with facts of experience or not. If they agree with facts of experience, the hypothesis become true. If not, the hypothesis is proved to be false and rejected. Here, verification involves deduction. You all know two types of verifications are there, direct and indirect. In case of direct verification, you can directly verify the thing, and in case of indirect verification, you need deduction. Deduction proves the universal conclusion of induction. So, according to Jevon, deduction is prior to induction. So, these are the two controversies. Now, question is, why this type of controversies arise? This controversy really arises because of the apparent distinction and opposed nature of deduction and induction. In deduction, we pass from universal to particular, but in induction, we pass from particular to universal. Apparently, it seems that deduction and induction are two different kinds of inferences. In one case, we pass from sum to all, in another case, we pass from all to sum. This is the reason that some logicians say that they are converse process. But according to some logicians again, induction is an ascending process, but deduction is a descending process. But these are not the correct position of deduction and induction. The correct position regarding the deduction and induction is that they are not two of reasoning distinct and independent of each other, and they are not two opposed kind of inference, rather they merely differ in starting point and procedure. I repeat, the correct position of deduction and induction is that they are not two kind of reasoning, distinct and independent of each other. They are not two opposed kind of inference also. They simply differ in their starting point and procedure. That means, the starting point and mode of one is different from other. So, actually induction and deduction differ in their starting point, not in their principles. They are the two aspects of the same process of reasoning. They are not different from each other. They are the two aspects of the same process of reasoning. It is on the basis of our need. We sometimes take deduction and sometimes we take induction. So, induction and deduction are two correlative and complementary process of reasoning. They are not different from each other. So, this is all about the relation between deduction and induction. Now, I am going to explain another topics of induction, and it is the different kinds of induction. What are the different kinds of induction and the classification of induction. Before I start, just have a look at this chart. How to classify induction. Firstly, Mill has classified induction mainly into two kinds: induction proper and induction improperly so called. Induction proper and induction improperly so called. Then again, induction proper has been classified into scientific induction, unscientific induction and analogy, and induction improperly so called is again classified into perfect induction, induction by parity of reasoning and colligation of facts. So, this is the picture of the classification of induction. Now, let us explain one by one. So, we all know what is induction. It is a mental process where we pass from something known to something unknown. Now, Mill had classified induction mainly into two kinds, induction proper and induction improperly so called. Then first one is induction proper. What is induction proper? In induction proper, on the basis of direct observation of or experiment on particular instances, a universal conclusion is proved and established in the conclusion. That means, take an example, say Ram is mortal, Sham is mortal, Jadu is mortal, Madhu is mortal. Therefore, conclusion is all men are mortal. Here what we are doing? On the basis of direct observation of particular instances, Ram, Sham, Jadu, Madhu, we are establishing a universal conclusion that all men are mortal. But one thing is very much present here, and this is the inductive leap or hazard of induction. So, between the premises and the conclusion, there is an inductive leap or hazard of induction. My dear students, to speak in a simple way, in case of induction proper, the presence of inductive leap or hazard is very much necessary, because inductive leap is the essence of induction. So, induction proper is that kind of induction where in the process of induction, the inductive leap or hazard is very much necessary. It has to be present. Okay. So, this kind of induction is induction proper. Now, induction proper may be of three kinds: scientific induction, unscientific induction and analogy. These are the three kinds of induction proper, and they belongs to the group of induction proper, because in every cases, that means in case of scientific induction, unscientific induction and analogy, the inductive leap or hazard is very much present there. So, induction proper may be of three kinds: scientific induction, unscientific induction and analogy. In our next class, we will start from this. We will explain what is scientific induction, what are its characteristics, unscientific induction, its characteristics, analogy, etc., etc. So, this much for today's class. Let me stop here. Thank you.